US Congressman Eric Burlinson discusses the Buga UFO orb case, a Japanese congressional UFO initiative, and how it's currently an uphill battle to get UFOs discussed in the US Congress. Congressman Burlinson was also told by David Grush that President Trump was briefed about Nordic extraterrestrials during his first term in office. The third interstellar object after Oumuamua and Borisov has entered our solar system. Intimidating children not to reveal UFO crash retrieval operations. Are alien medbeds the golden cure to disease and aging? These stories and more on Exopolitics today, the week in review.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Well, welcome to the July 5 edition of Exopolitics Today, the week in review. Hope everyone in the United States had a great Independence Day. So I want to begin with this tweet concerning a short interview US Congressman Eric Burlinson had where he discusses the Buga UFO orb case in Mexico, a Japanese congressional UFO initiative, and how it's currently an uphill battle to get UFOs discussed in the US Congress. So this was Congressman Burlinson on Redacted, where he discusses those topics. And he is currently the employer who did get David Grush to join his staff as a senior advisor. So Rush is giving him a lot of information about the UFO issue. Now, Congressman Burlinson discussed how the Buga UFO case is something that has a lot of international attention. And a little bit later on, I will be commenting on some photos taken by JP from 2017, where similar orbs were coming out of a cigar-shaped mothership. Now, could that be the origin of the Buga UFO sphere? That's something we need to consider. Also, Burlinson talked about a Japanese congressional UFO initiative, and this is something that is happening around the world where parliamentarians are looking at what's going on in the United States and asking, well, why don't we have our own kind of like UFO caucus? Why don't we have people in Congress having hearings where we bring experts and whistleblowers in to discuss this? So the Japanese are wanting to do this, and that's great because Japan has been a hotspot for UFOs for many decades, and according to some, there is a Japanese secret space program. So that's also very, very interesting. And Congressman Burlinson also talked about how difficult it is now to discuss UFOs in the US Congress, that there's been a sea change in terms of the conditions are no longer favorable for making a lot of progress in getting UFO hearings, in getting the mass media to engage with congressmen on the UFO issue, because there's been, I guess you would call it, a kind of rollback by the deep state where the prospects of official disclosure have been kind of rolled back. All right, so here is an interview I did with Gene Decode, which is available in full on Patreon, Rumble, Spotify. The intro only is available on YouTube because of YouTube's, let's just say they have a great dislike for Gene Decode, and interviews with him tend to be taken down. So I didn't take that risk. So you could watch that interview with Gene on Patreon, and that's and for those of you that have subscribed to Patreon, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. That really does help this channel. For those of you that haven't, well, you get the benefit of watching the full uncensored version of videos such as this by Gene Decode with no ads. There's a lot of ads on Rumble. There's a lot of ads on YouTube. And also you get early access. So you get it a few days before it's released. So that's all for $7 a month. And in that month you get 12 to 13 videos. So if you do the math, it's about 50, 60 cents per interview, per video, which is really such a deal. And as I said, it does support the channel, and thank you for all who have subscribed. So in this interview, Gene talks about when he first learned of colonies on Mars, and his father was a scientist working with, I think it was Martin Marietta, the predecessor of Lockheed Martin, or one of the companies that was merged in what today we know as Lockheed Martin. But Martin Marietta was an aerospace company in the 60s, and Gene's father was one of their scientists and engineers. And he would often work from home, and Gene said that as a youngster, he would be told things by his father. And one of the things he was told was that that there are colonies on Mars, that in the 60s they had established a colony on Mars, and that Gene's father was working on some kind of soil sampler technology that was going to be sent up on a mission to Mars, and that also that they had conducted missions to the moon. So that's fascinating to kind of get that level of confirmation, and kind of helps explain how Gene Decode developed his interest in the whole topic. I mean, he is someone who maintains his anonymity. Gene Decode is not his real name. And because he spent over 20 years in the US Navy on serving on 5 classes of submarines, working with special forces, being told a lot of things, he is very careful about protecting himself from the deep state. And I think he's learned, like JP has learned, what are the parameters of safety if you're a whistleblower, if you're revealing some of these classified programs, or you're able to develop skill sets that give you access. Now, I think Gene had a couple of near-death experiences. He is able to remote view with some accuracy what's going on in these places. And like many remote viewers who are accurate, they have to be very, very careful. And so Gene, that's why he maintains his anonymity. So we talk about Mars, the Israel-Iran war, the American Pope, and artificial intelligence. Now, here is something that I thought was very interesting. It's an interview extract featuring Congressman Eric Burlinson revealing what he was told by David Grush concerning President Trump. So it goes for a couple of minutes. So let me play that for you.
That the Nordic people or the Nordic aliens are like a few hundred years more advanced than we are, but they're not super advanced. They're not like, he said, the Greys, whatever is sending the Greys is extremely advanced, like thousands and thousands of years more advanced than us, because it's doing all the anti-gravity stuff, all this crazy stuff that's very highly advanced. And a lot of it is what he says with the Greys is psionic. So they basically don't have physical interfaces. They're using their mind, and that there's an interface that picks up thought, and then that and that's how they operate these vehicles, is out of psionic. But the Nordic people somewhat resemble humans, and they have been experimenting with crossbreeding with humans. And he says some of them, that there are aliens that are crossbreeds living in the world. And I asked him, I go, okay, do they know that they're a crossbreed, or do they, like, how would you know that they are a crossbreed? And he didn't have an answer for that. Like he didn't know if they knew what, but he said that the briefings he's had talked about them. And he said when Trump was briefed on this topic, because Trump finally had a briefing and he was in the middle of impeachment, like he was in the middle of being impeached. So he's going through that. And then he had like this existential briefing that just kind of rocked his worldview. He joked in the briefing whenever they said that there are these half breeds. He joked that Adam Schiff must be one of them. And so, yeah.
Okay, well, there you get this corroboration that President Trump was briefed about these Nordic or human-looking extraterrestrials during his first term in office. And that corroborates what Professor Haim Eshed said. He's the father of Israel's spy satellite program, and he said towards the end of Trump's first term that Trump was in communication with the Galactic Federation. That's another way of describing these Nordic-looking extraterrestrials. And that Trump was told that humanity was not ready yet for disclosure because the level of our technology is not developed enough, that we need to have more advanced technologies out there. Otherwise, humanity would have a meltdown, and a lot of people would start worshipping the extraterrestrials. And so now this is what Congressman Burlinson was told by David Grush. And David Grush, for those that maybe need to be refreshed, he's a former US Air Force intelligence officer, and towards the end of his service, he worked for the National Reconnaissance Office and then with the National Geospatial Agency, and he was the liaison for both of those organizations to the UAP task force that had been assembled by the US Navy. And so that meant that as the liaison, he got to hear from a lot of sources, and he describes 40 sources or 40 independent sources describing UFO crash retrieval programs. And so he's very knowledgeable on this topic, and this is something that Congressman Burlinson has been benefiting from in terms of being able to ask Grush many questions. Okay, now here is David Grush himself, and he says something here that I think is worth just listening to, where he talks about the recovery of different kind of like biologics in these UFO crash retrieval programs. So I'll play that for you now.
Certainly the numbers are up there, just the same as crash retrievals. We'll leave it as double digit. And the biologics came in a variety of states and morphologies and all that stuff. But yeah, that's the stuff I can't quite get into publicly. But I encourage the president and others to kind of explain the types of biological recoveries we've had. I encourage the executive branch in our country to inform the world on that.
Okay, so he's talking about there being more than 10 kind of UFO recoveries in the United States alone. We know that from Dr. Hal Puthoff, who did an interview on the Joe Rogan show and essentially confirmed, given his status as a senior scientist, over 50 years of experience working in many classified programs, he confirmed that there had been more than 10 UFO crash retrieval programs, operations in the United States, which is pretty similar to what Clifford Stone, who worked for 22 years in the US Army, but served on these UFO crash retrieval programs from 1969 up until 1991. Stone said that he had been on roughly 20 crash retrieval programs, and that there had been about a dozen or so in the United States. So that all kind of matches what the information David Grush is sharing here. But the important thing was that he was talking about the biologics, in other words, body parts, complete bodies that had been recovered in these crash retrievals. So we're talking about alien bodies. Now, this is relevant because Emery Smith, he worked at Kirtland Air Force Base in the 1990s as a surgical first assist. So he served for, I think it was 4 years or 6 years, and then he got to work with some corporations down there. But he described how there were these classified programs down there at Kirtland in a secure area that were actually being controlled by a major corporation that he didn't disclose. So he says that he was recruited for that program, and he did hundreds of tissue samples on recovered biologics from these crash retrieval operations. So you can understand what was happening here, that you have these crash retrievals happening around the United States and around the world, and that the United States would arrange for the biologics. So you might have the technology being taken to a place like Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where they are very skilled in studying the kind of like propulsion and navigation systems of advanced aerospace vehicles and so forth. But the biologics were taken to places like Kirtland, and what Smith said was that this facility at Kirtland Air Force Base, that it was actually under the control of a corporation. So you have the corporation actually running the study of the biologics, and there was also a vehicle there as well, a recovered vehicle as well. So you have a corporation studying biologics and studying a recovered craft on a military facility where the military guys really just come in and provide different services and so forth, but it's a corporation that runs it, that is actually in charge of the whole thing. So it really would be great if David Grush and Emery Smith got together to talk about this. Now, that's something that certainly I would recommend to both of them, or to anyone that is in contact with both of them, that it would really be very helpful to have them come together and do a interview, do a roundtable discussion where they discuss these kinds of topics. All right, here's some great humor. I thought it's always nice to have a little bit of humor when we're discussing the UFO issue, because it is such a serious one. But this one just kind of struck me as really funny. So anyway, let me play it. It's under a minute, and let's enjoy.
Okay guys, Foot here. We're here at the Cosmic Summit UFO conference with all the fucking nerds, and we're gonna get the 411 on what all the fuss is about.
Well, that was the most boring talk I've ever had to listen to. Some dude called Project Unity or Puberty going on about consciousness and the pyramids. Fuck that shit, man. I'm starving.
This is delicious. Someone told me this was reserved for Eric Davis, but fuck that guy.
So I just met these fine ladies, and they are DTF. One of them told me she wants to try some hot brown chocolate, and I think it's only fair I oblige.
Chat, she was a fucking dude. God damn it. My ass is cooked. I should have known her grapefruit-sized Adam's apple was too good to be true. Now there's some crazy dude called Ashton Forbes chasing me and going all Costco on my ass. Says I just fucked the love of his life and that he's gonna teleport my ass to Diego Garcia. I gotta find me a safe place. Somewhere he will never, ever, ever get to. Okay, guys, Foot.
Okay, so that was some humour, maybe a little unfair on Ashton Forbes, who I have interviewed, and I think he's done some great work. But still, humour is humour, and it is nice to start your week with a laugh if you can. All right, so let's look at this next story. So this is a interview that Ross Coulthart did with Congressman, or actually Senator, Mike Rounds. So Senator Rounds basically told Ross Coulthart that they're going to reintroduce the UAP Disclosure Act. So let's see. Here's the transcript of what was said. Are we going to see a reintroduction of the UAP Disclosure Act? Are you going to try and get it through the Congress once again this year? Senator Rounds. I've been informed that Senator Schumer would like to partner once again and that we would offer it again this year in the National Defense Authorization Act for 2026, which we'll begin working on here in the next few weeks. So the answer is yes, we intend to move forward once again. All right, so this is actually very helpful to know that the UAP Disclosure Act is going to be submitted again. Now, this is the third time it's going to be submitted. The first time it didn't get anywhere. The second time it was gutted, and only a portion of it got through, and that portion created an archivist in the US National Archives who would pull together UFO reports from all the different intelligence and military services in the United States. So there would be one stopping point for UFO reports. So you wouldn't have to go to like the NRO or to the Air Force or to the National Geospatial Agency to kind of like find out, well, what do you guys have on UFOs, which can be very arduous. Now, all of that is taken to the archivist at the National Archives, and the unclassified elements of it are made available to the general public, and that, I believe, is all digitized, or that's the plan. So the key element that was gutted in the, what was it, the last year's National Defense Authorization Act, where they gutted the UAP Disclosure Act, the key element was the creation of this 9-person panel of experts who would report directly to the president in terms of which UFO reports should be declassified and made available to the public. So the idea was that, you know, with all of these reports of UFO crash retrieval operations, recovery of non-human intelligent biologics, that all of this would kind of like make its way to this 9-person panel, and that they would then make recommendations to the president as to what elements of that could be safely released to the public without causing any problems. Now, this 9-person panel of experts would have the power of subpoena, and also it would be able to assert eminent domain over any military, intelligence, or private organization like a corporation and so forth that had any UFO material. Now, this was a big problem because the aerospace companies that have been given these recovered technologies for decades now, I mean, they view that technology as their proprietary technology. Even though it was recovered by the US Air Force and initially studied by Air Force engineers and then handed over to the corporations, agreements were signed whereby the corporations would share any would share the technological breakthroughs, but that that would be their proprietary interest. So that was how the corporations were able to kind of like justify why they could get involved in the UFO issue and not study these recovered craft and understand how they operate, and then just kind of like pass that information onto the Air Force without any protection that the corporation would be able to use that information for its own reverse engineering programs. And so, yeah, the power of eminent domain is problematic for these major aerospace corporations. And to the feedback that all of us got in this kind of exopolitical UFO field with the gutting of the UAP Disclosure Act in last year's version, was that this was because there were members of Congress in the House of Representatives, the head of the intelligence, the Republican heads of the intelligence and the defense committees that were opposed to passage of the UAP Act. And so they arranged for it to be scuttled in a reconciliation meeting. And that was presumably because both of them were contacted by the aerospace community and told, no, this is not a good idea. And the aerospace community, military-industrial complex, they provide millions of dollars in funding to members of Congress, and so it would take a brave congressman to go against the will of his funders. And so that's why it was gutted. And so the question is, well, isn't the same thing going to happen this year? If you're going to have major aerospace companies saying, no, we don't like elements of this, they threaten our interests. And so it would really take a major lobbying effort behind the scenes, and someone like President Trump supporting the passage of the UAP Disclosure Act. Now, will Trump do this? Would he support this UAP Disclosure Act or lobby for it in any way similar to the way he lobbied for his big, beautiful bill? I highly doubt it, but it's possible. I mean, as I mentioned, Trump has been briefed about Nordic extraterrestrials and the need for the release of advanced technologies. So he may look at this as being a way to get the United States up to speed in terms of sufficiently advanced technologies whereby extraterrestrials could eventually reveal themselves. So that could spur Trump on. He hasn't given any indication yet of doing that. It may happen later in his administration. I imagine probably in another year or two, Trump would be much more committed, because that will be him establishing his legacy in arranging for some of these advanced technologies being released. But right now, I mean, it's still the first year of his second administration. I think he might hold back, and so that means that this UAP Disclosure Act is probably unlikely to get too far. I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see. Okay, so here is a update where JP discusses some photos he took in 2017 of a cigar-shaped spacecraft where there were a number of orbs associated with that. Now, this was one of the photos he sent me in 2017, and this was, as I recall, October of 2017. So this was just after Hurricane Irma had led to the closure of MacDill Air Force Base. And JP at that time was living in Tampa, Florida. He was being encouraged by operatives from MacDill Air Force Base to take photos of flying triangles and flying rectangles. And then just weeks after that happened, you have this hurricane bearing down on MacDill Air Force Base, and MacDill shutting down, having to shut down, and that hurricane was named Irma, which is the German war goddess. And the speculation that I put out there was that this was something that the Dark Fleet in Antarctica created through their use of directed energy weapons, or ionospheric heaters and so forth, to steer the hurricane directly towards Tampa, where JP was being encouraged by covert Air Force operatives. I mean, one day this will become major news that this happened, and we got photos. There were multiple photos, and in this video, JP talks about that incident and talks about the orbs that came out of that. So here you can probably just make out one of the orbs. I mean, there were, and here's another one. So I think there were, and here's another one up here. So there were like, I think 4 or 5 orbs that that JP is here speculating that these orbs are very similar to what was found in Buga, Colombia, and so that's why he did this video, to discuss that. And he also shared a short video clip of a craft above his home, but I'll get to that soon. Okay, so this is where JP is kind of like reminding us all about these photos that are now 8 years old, but they're still important even today, because by and large they were pretty much ignored. There was only one kind of like mainstream newspaper that discussed these articles or discussed these photos, and that was the Tampa Bay Times. They did a story on it, but it was kind of like, well, not quite ridiculing it, but not giving it much seriousness. Okay, so what we are seeing now is a video that JP took of a UFO above his home. So this was 1 week ago on Saturday. So that would have been Saturday night or early Sunday morning of the 28th of June, where JP went outside. JP often gets summoned to go outside, and he started to photograph this craft that was above his house. Now you see something splitting. You see the craft splitting. So this is where it's clear that we're not looking at a plane, we're not looking at a drone, we're not looking at birds. We're looking at a glowing object in the sky that begins to split. It splits into two at JP's home, and this is happening directly above his home. And yeah, it's displaying certain interesting maneuvers, and certain things are coming up. But now you see it's splitting and rejoining. I mean, this is, to me, very compelling evidence that we are talking about something. There you go. Look at that. Splitting, and this is clearly no conventional object, and joining again. And once again, let's see, it splits. So this is really remarkable UFO footage that JP has. And so JP has film footage, and this is typically from the Nordic extraterrestrials who he's been working with, that they will kind of like appear and allow him to take video or photos of their craft. All right, so now the thing is, so JP released this video, and immediately after releasing it, we're talking less than an hour after releasing it, JP says he felt intense chest pains, and he actually went to the hospital and to be checked out. And he believes he was attacked by a directed energy weapon. Well, why would that happen? Why would they attack JP with a directed energy weapon? Well, back in 2017, and this is on the record, he was warned by black hats or CIA operatives not to release videos of UFOs, only photos. So JP was being helped by white hats within the Air Force to take photos of craft, and there's a couple of incidents where I described JP driving his car and someone pulling up beside him and saying, "Look up." And there, when JP looked up, he saw flying triangles or flying rectangles, and so he was being helped to take photos, but he was also warned by the Black Hats operatives, the CIA operatives, not to take videos. So that was their red line. Photos okay, videos no, because videos obviously you can analyze those much more, and they're much more compelling in terms of proving what happened. And so JP over the years has taken just only a few videos. He sent those to me, and we have released those, but they haven't been as compelling as this one that he was just released. So yeah, this is, I think, a good sign that JP is going to be taking videos now of the UFO craft that appear, whether over his home or in secluded areas where he's directed to go, and he will release that to the general public. So that's good, because the official UFO disclosure process has pretty much stalled. I've covered that in my last week in review. It's pretty much stalled. So these private organic efforts need to increase. And I think the extraterrestrials know that, the white hats know that, and so they're going to have people like JP be given the opportunity to take more photos and more videos. All right, so this takes me to something that JP put out. A couple of in his last two updates, JP, his update number 46, JP said that he attended a briefing at Eglin Air Force Base, and in this briefing of roughly 40 Nordic extraterrestrials and 40 Air Force operatives, that they were told that there was a Pacific space ark that had been accessed by the deep state, and that they were using it to heat up the ocean. And so there was going to be some mission where they would investigate what was going on. Now, in his next update, that's update number 47, and I covered that I think that was 2 weeks ago, update number 47. Well, no, actually, no, that was last week. Yeah, last week in update number 47, JP says that he was abducted in Japan and taken to the Pacific Space Ark, where he saw 30 fully clad in black deep state operatives that radiated an aggressive, evil energy, and that they threatened him and tried to force him to activate elements of the space ark. So somehow they had gained access, and they were inside. They had abducted JP and had taken him there. And there was also a Nordic extraterrestrial who was there as well. Now, the exact role that the Nordic played, we don't know, but maybe that Nordic helped the Black Hats to get in there. Maybe he had been forced to help the Black Hats. But that was the situation JP described. Now, Elena Denan did a Star Nations News update where she talked about ancient space arks and them falling into the wrong hands. So I'll just play for you what she had to say. And
if the ancient space arks have not fallen into the wrong hands, the ancient colonization vessels left on your planet and in other places in your star system by the ancient cedar cultures remain dormant for long periods of time. 4 years ago, they all activated when they received a pulse signal from the Intergalactic Confederation's armada of 5 fleets, each composed of 100 vessels entering your star system. These space arks are protected by impenetrable shielding technology. None of these vessels have been hacked by low vibrational intentions because the technology prevents such intrusions.
Okay, so you have their information shared from a extraterrestrial herald that Elena Danaan claims communicated to her that quote, the ancient space arcs have not fallen into the wrong hands. Now, when I saw that, I thought she was directly contradicting what JP had said. And certainly we can see that the Pacific space arc had fallen into the wrong hands. Now, I think what Elena was trying to say was that it's not controlled by the evil ones or the deep state, and that is true. That's what JP said. So maybe it's her lack of English skills or something, but nevertheless, she's citing a Galactic Herald. These are the words coming through, so we have to take them on face value. And the face value here is that they had fallen into the wrong hands. Now, that doesn't mean that they're controlled by the Black Hats, because the Black Hats, the CIA operatives, they had abducted JP and taken him onto the Pacific space arc, and they had tried to force him to activate it because he has the frequency and the consciousness to do this. And JP said, no, F you, I'm not going to do it. And the Nordic said the same. So what that shows is that even though these Black Hats are able to access the space arcs and assert some control, and we don't know exactly how they did that because, as I mentioned in the earlier briefing, update number 46, the briefing at Eglin Air Force Base, JP was told that the Black Hats were using the Pacific space arc they were somehow activating it, and it was heating up the surrounding ocean to tremendous temperatures. So this is an important nuance here, that the Black Hats are able to somehow gain access there, and maybe through manipulating people with the right frequency and right consciousness, they could get the arcs to be activated in certain limited ways. Now, these space arcs are protected by impenetrable shielding technology, and that is true. But of course, we know that once the deep state is able to access these facilities or these advanced technologies, you have the case of the Hall of Record in Bujej, Romania, where Caesar Brad says that he was the one that was able to access the Hall of Records that was protected by this impenetrable shielding. But once he had penetrated it, then the deep state, or the American forces, which included a significant Freemason element, were able to get access. So it seems that this is the way in which the deep state operates, that these ancient space technologies are protected by impenetrable shielding technologies, but when you have someone with the right frequencies and consciousness opening that up, what happens afterwards is something that could give the deep state a means of accessing that technology. Now, that's accessing and control are different things, and we need to keep aware of that difference. So none of these vessels have been hacked by low vibrational intentions because the technology prevents such intrusions. So, okay, again, this is where you could make the case that this is consistent with what JP had said, because JP said that they needed him to be able to hack the technology there, or to operate the technology, that they couldn't hack into it. So that that is consistent with what JP says. Now, however, I think the unfortunate way in which Elena put out this information, starting off the bat by saying the ancient space arcs have not fallen into the wrong hands, that's clearly not correct. According to JP, they have fallen into the wrong hands. The Pacific Space Arc, and in the earlier briefing, JP said that there were other space arcs that were also being activated, and that there was some deep state elements. So we know that these space arcs can be accessed and fall into the wrong hands, but that's not to say that they are then controlled, because the technology does have these protective mechanisms that Elena Danaan did describe, which is consistent with what JP said. So I think that it's important that we understand that there's a lot of nuances here, but certainly we do not want to make the assumption that the dark hats have no way of gaining access or being able to use these space arcs, on their own, because they do find ways of doing that. Clearly, in the Pacific Space Arc, they both gained access, and they were abducting individuals to activate certain things. And so in the case of JP and that Nordic extraterrestrial, they failed, but they might succeed with someone else. They might abduct someone else with the right frequency and abduct that person's daughter as well. And you can imagine the scenario where that person could reluctantly say, okay, I'll do it for you. Just don't hurt my girl, sort of thing. So yeah, this is the way the deep state operates. And the ancient space technologies, there are protective mechanisms in place, but the deep state does find a way to be able to access these, and then there's a struggle over to what degree they can control those. All right, so here's a Exopolitics commentary I did on President Trump's attack on Iranian nuclear facilities, and this stopping the Gog and Magog end times war. Now, in my commentary, I showed a 30-minute segment from an earlier webinar I did, where I presented information about the Gog and Magog war, and it's how it's described in various religious texts, and the connection to information that was shared by General Wesley Clark in 2001 about 7 Middle East countries being attacked, and also the City of London in 2005, that was also that there was a plan hatched at that City of London to essentially start a Gog and Magog end times war, where you would have nuclear weapons used and millions of people die and so forth. So this was a plan being hatched by elites, Satanists, if you like, associated with the City of London. Now, I did make one factual error in my presentation, and that is that Boris Johnson was the mayor of metropolitan London. That a reader kindly contacted me and said that the mayor of London is different to the City of London. That the City of London is a kind of 1 square kilometre area right in the heart of metropolitan London, and that the elected mayor of London, does not actually control the City of London, other than making sure that the infrastructure is working and so forth. Okay, so this was a plan hatched by very powerful elites associated with the City of London, and this is where you get very high-level Freemasons involved, and the British monarchy are also being involved in hatching this plan to start a Gog and Magog end times war. and that would involve Israel being in a war with Iran and other countries aligned with Iran, and that Israel would be surrounded by all these enemies, and that there would be a war, and that this would spill over into this Gog and Magog end times war, and then get biblical prophecy fulfilled, and you would have like the appearance of the Antichrist, and then the return of Christ, and battles, and then eventually peace and all of that. So, that's what I described in this. Now, what happened was that Donald Trump launched this preemptive is not quite correct, because you had Israel attacking Iran on June 13, and then Iran responding 12 hours later with attacks on Israel using ballistic missiles, drones, and so forth. And so then you had this kind of war playing out. And then on June 22nd, Donald Trump attacked 3 Iranian nuclear facilities and kind of telegraphed that he was going to attack those facilities, and the Iranians took out their personnel and maybe some of the most sensitive material that they could with just a couple of hours' notice. And then the Iranians retaliated against US bases in the region, and also telegraphed that they were going to attack. So that way the US didn't suffer any loss of life. And so at the end of this, Donald Trump could bring about a ceasefire between Iran and Israel. And that ceasefire has held up until this time. And so that leads to the question, did Trump stop the Gog and Magog war? Because if he hadn't have intervened, this war could have expanded. Or maybe as a result of his intervention, if he hadn't done things in a certain way, telegraphing that, we're going to attack your facilities, get your people out, sort of thing, that if he hadn't taken those steps, maybe this could have expanded into this major regional war that would have sucked in other major powers like Russia and China, at the very least supplying military hardware to Iran. But certainly there would have been extensive support in terms of volunteers from other Muslim nations to kind of like wage jihad on the Israelis. So it could have really very easily escalated, but it didn't, and that was because Trump intervened the way he did, and seems to have succeeded. Now, people are saying, well, this is just the prelude to what's going to happen in the future. Iran is now going to go ahead and create a nuclear weapon, and so there will be renewed hostilities. Not necessarily. I think that what happened in Israel, in terms of the Iranian ballistic missile attacks, I mean, there were over 30,000 Israeli structures that were severely damaged, and according to one report I've heard that there have been requests for assistance or repairs of up to 30,000 structures in Israel. And so I think the Israeli public certainly would not want to go through that again, because the Iranian missile capability is certainly very powerful, as is the Israeli Air Force. And so I don't think the Iranians want to go through this as well. So Trump can certainly play a significant role in ensuring the ceasefire goes forward, because Trump does really want to present himself as a peacemaker, and I think he did that with India and Pakistan. He has negotiated a peaceful outcome to the Rwanda and Republic of Congo conflict that's been going on for 20 years. He's trying to bring about a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, and he succeeded in bringing about a ceasefire here with between Iran and Israel. So I think Trump has a vested interest in ensuring that Israel and Iran don't go to war again, and that you have an expansion of the Abraham Accords, where other countries like Syria join the Abraham Accords, and Saudi Arabia makes peace, and that's all predicated on there being ceasefires in the Gaza Strip, and some sort of solution there, and some sort of ceasefire between Israel and Iran, and so I think that this Gog and Magog end times war, which is what the deep state wants to do, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't believe it's going to happen at all. All right, so here's something that was brought to my attention. This is the third interstellar object after Oumuamua and Borisov that's been observed by astronomers. So this is something that has come into our solar system. It's been tracked by astronomers, and they said it's an interstellar object. So the first interstellar object, Oumuamua, we've had multiple sources talk about that. Now, the most kind of like, let's just say, most credentialed observer was Professor Avi Loeb, who wrote papers about it and wrote a book about it, saying that this was a derelict spacecraft that has been out there for thousands of years and has come from a distant solar system and has finally made it to our solar system. And other sources say that this was a scout craft, that it actually is something that is performing a kind of reconnaissance mission for some extraterrestrials. So those are kind of other sources talk about that as well, including JP. He kind of shared some information about Oumuamua several years ago when it appeared. Now, this third object, what is it? Could it be a derelict spacecraft? Could it be an advanced spacecraft or scout ship for another extraterrestrial civilization? I guess we'll find out in the weeks and months ahead. All right, so here is I just retweeted something from Jason Sands, who's a whistleblower, and he tweeted this kind of short extract where you have this witness who was a child during the Roswell crash. I think she was 10 years old at the time. I don't know when this video was made. I think it's been around for some time. But she describes how she was just a child at the time, and how she and her family were threatened by by military police to not talk at all about what they had seen in terms of the Roswell crash, in terms of some of the debris, some of the material from the Roswell craft that they had seen. So let's just play a little bit of this. Share this tab. Okay, let's.
Maybe in my head that I never saw it.
Okay, well, you can watch the rest of that. It goes for a few minutes, but it gives you a glimpse into how it is that these operatives come in after a crash retrieval operation to sanitize the witnesses and the area, and witnesses are intimidated and whatever they saw, I mean, as she just explained, and I think that's a very important distinction, is that it's not just a matter of saying, well, we don't want you to talk about this, that it's like, you did not see that. And you have to agree, or you have to say, I did not see that. And so I think that they do that because you can, well, there's a big difference between saying, okay, I won't tell anyone about it, you're just making a promise, but you make that promise and it's just like, yeah, I did see it, right? But I'm just promising not to talk about it, and that's it. Your mind is kind of like pretty consistent on what happened. But if you're told you did not see that, and you agree, then cognitive dissonance comes in, so that over time your mind starts to say, well, no, I didn't see it. I didn't see anything. I didn't handle the UFO material. And so I think this is part of the psychological warfare that goes on with how you have witnesses intimidated. And even as a child, I think she was 10 years old at the time when this happened, that the operatives will come in and they will make sure that you do not talk about this, and do it in a way that kind of like creates this kind of scarring. And she was very emotional through this. I mean, clearly this was incredibly traumatic for her, and she didn't talk about it until much later in life. Okay, so here's an interview I did with Dr. Andrea Martin and Michelle Portofrio, where we discussed my exopolitics research and decreasing prospects for official disclosure, and thoughts about the Galactic Federation of Worlds agreements with white hats' existing power structures. Now, Dr. Andrea Martin I've interviewed, and I plan to soon interview Michelle Portofrio. She's based in Brazil, and they are both part of the Galactic Envoy program. And there's a third person, Erica Amorina, who I will be interviewing very soon as well. And she's written a book, and I did a review of that book that's available on my website. It's one of my commentaries. And they all say that they are galactic envoys, where they came here to Earth as part of this program whereby they would have a partner that would stay up on the ships and would disclose information to them. So this is something that I think is very important, because when we're talking about organizations, galactic organizations like the Galactic Federation of Worlds, it's very important that we do not rely on just one source of information, especially given that there are other sources, very credible sources. Dr. Andrea Martin is very credible, worked for 19 years at Worcester University as an adjunct professor. She taught UFO classes, and she put her career on the line in talking about UFOs when the powers that be didn't want her to talk about it. So she has paid the price, and I think that's very important in terms of credibility. Those of us who have academic backgrounds, PhDs and so forth, did you take a stand? Did you, when you learn about the UFO cover-up and being visited by extraterrestrial life, did you say, okay, this is important and I'm going to talk about it even if it risks my career? Because so many people in academia don't do that. And I remember going through that, talking to my peers, and some of them actually said, yeah, well, we believe you, but we can't talk about this because, my tenure would be at risk. My career would be at risk. And I came across that several times. And Dr. Andrea Martin is the same. She also went through that. So I acknowledge that as very important. And what Dr. Martin is doing is very critical here. She is gathering people who have had experiences as galactic envoys to come forward. And so there are many envoys, and we know some of the others that have come forward. Jean-Charles Moyen, Melanie Charest are two others who have come forward to talk about their experiences as part of this kind of like envoy program. And so we need to look at all of these testimonies, not take the position that, well, there's only one source that we accept as legitimate, and we're only going to listen to this one source of information about the Galactic Federation because she was the first. Well, actually, she wasn't the first. The Swaru material was prior to that source of information I'm referring to, who emerged in 2021. The Swaru material came out in 2017, 2018, and that talked about the Galactic Federation. And some of that material has been, let's just say, appropriated by other sources claiming to be the one and only representative of the Galactic Federation of Worlds. And that's not true. We know that there are multiple sources. And, you know, I know this is very controversial and people get very heated about this. My position is that as a political scientist, exopolitics researcher, you got to listen to all of the perspectives. Even if you say, okay, well, this person is the representative of the Galactic Federation, so their word is like, you know, take it to the bank. Okay, if that's your opinion, go with that. But there are multiple sources, and some of these sources are very, very credible. I think Jean-Charles Moyen has much more evidence than many of these others who have come forward to claim that they're communicating with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. And so I think that is very impressive. JP also has a lot of evidence in the form of dozens of photographs and some videos as well. Okay, so we need to have multiple sources. Don't rely on one. Yeah, okay, here's a interview I did with Jalila Starr where we discuss alien medbeds. Are they the golden cure to disease and aging? So it is currently available on Patreon. So if you are a Patreon subscriber, you paid your $7 and you get 12, 13 videos, early access a month. So you're paying 60 cents for this. Wow, 60 cents, and you can listen to this interview with Jalila Starr. Or you can wait till Monday and it'll be available on YouTube and Rumble and Spotify and the other channels for free. So that's fine too. Now, in this interview, what Jalila does is discuss the warning she was given in the 1990s and early 2000s about supposed friendly extraterrestrials showing up with advanced technologies like medbeds, and how this would actually be a Trojan horse for deceiving and controlling humanity, and that there is a lot of merit in us as a species, given our current dependency on the conventional healing industry, to have more time to develop self-healing abilities. And so, you know, that's going to be controversial because I know there's a lot of people that want med beds and they want med beds yesterday. I want to get in that med bed and cure my arthritis or whatever it is. And what Jalila is saying is that can be very easily exploited by negative extraterrestrials. And so in order not to be exploited as a species, more of us have to learn how to do the self-healing. And I'm learning that involuntarily. I mean, I'm having to learn that. I have no choice. I almost died back in February of this year after being poisoned, and the medical community wants to cut me up and do surgery and say, that's the only way you're going to live. And I said, no, F you. No, I didn't say F you. I'm too polite for that. I just said, no, I'm not going to do it. And so I'm definitely on that self-healing track because, you know, I don't want to do surgery. I don't want to be put out of circulation for 6 months. And then what happens after that? You do more surgery because the first surgery didn't quite work. And so now I've heard too many horror stories about that. So I'm on the self-healing path, and I fully think that this is the path many of us need to follow, and it takes a risk. You know, I mean, it's easy to just like say, oh yeah, I'll do the surgery. Oh yeah, I'll get on the pharmaceutical products. But, you know, eat healthy, do supplements, take supplements, you know, support the alternatives out there. There are a lot of really impressive alternative healers out there. I'm working with Jerry Wills, who's a fantastic psychic healer. He's helped me a lot, and there are others that have helped me. Dr. David Clements, Jean-Charles Moyen has helped me in the past. So there are many healers out there, but ultimately, and this is what we discuss in this interview, is that you could have the most fantastic psychic healing, like really incredible healing by visiting someone, but if you get into those same thought modes that got you sick in the first place, then you're going to get sick again. So this is where the self-healing requires us to be cognizant of our thoughts. We have to take control of our thoughts, that you need to really connect with that part of yourself which is like centered in your heart center, your soul consciousness, whatever you want to call it, and connect with that and feel, I am healed. Because you're connected with your soul conscious, and you got to say it with conviction, I am healed. Because if you don't do that, then what's going to happen is that, you're going to have thoughts coming in. The doctor said you got to go in and have surgery. This nurse said you got to take this pharmaceutical product, or you'll start ending up in hospital again. And people will come up to you and say, hey, you need to do it, otherwise you'll die. And these negative thought forms come in, and you'll lose whatever faith you have, conviction you have in that healing that you have begun to do by connecting with your higher self, or working with a healer like Jerry Wills or many other talented healers. So, this is what we discuss in the interview, and I think it's very helpful. Okay, all right. So the alien medbeds. All right, now the webinar, I did my presentation along with a panel featuring George Kavasilis and Sarah Bressman, is now available on Vimeo. So I know that not everyone likes to use Crowdcast. For some reason, Crowdcast doesn't seem to work for some people. It's fine. You can watch it now on Vimeo. So the link is here. Or you can go to the description in this video, and you'll have the link to the Vimeo version of Dilemma of a Star Trek Future. So that'll have my presentation, about an hour and a half, hour 40 minutes. Then it has a 1 hour, 50-minute panel, and then there's a Q&A, which lasted close to an hour. So definitely great value. So that's available on Vimeo right now. Now, Kerry Cassidy, she wrote, I think, a really very important article that talks about the influence of Satanism and the split within humanity that it has created. She relates it to extraterrestrial genetics and the manipulation of humanity over millennia by different off-world groups through the different bloodlines that they have created. She raises many important points, excellent points, about major religions such as Catholicism being captured by negative extraterrestrials and being infiltrated by Satanists. She also discusses artificial intelligence, super soldiers, transhumanism, Khazarian mafia, Aldebaran, extraterrestrials, and so forth. Now, I do agree with her that the US is currently ground zero for the global battle between Satanists and white hats and the Earth Alliance and Christians and so forth. And I mentioned earlier about Donald Trump's intervention in the Gog and Magog war. I think that the deep state played a role in starting that. I think that the preemptive Israeli attack was, I think, something that was spurred by these deep state figures. I personally don't think that Benjamin Netanyahu is a very honorable person at all. I think he's works with this, let's just say, these deep state people that dabble in Satanism and are influenced by Draco reptilians and so forth. Now, The one thing that I would add to Kerry's article is that I don't think that this is just a division between Satanists and white hats, or the or the Earth Alliance, whatever you want to call it. That this is not unique to Earth. Many other worlds and organizations, such as the Galactic Federation of Worlds, face similar challenges when it comes to third, fourth, and fifth density civilizations. So these Satanists, they have infiltrated other worlds. People call it the Luciferian Rebellion. There was an article that came out about a dozen years ago called The Hidden Hand, and it talked about 13 ruling bloodline families on Earth. But it said that of those 13, 10 have off-world origins. So that means that 10 of the ruling bloodlines on Earth have off-world origins. And these off-world origins are the ones that Kerry Cassidy has said have established the different bloodlines on Earth. So you have the Anglo-Saxon kind of bloodline, and so you have a particular group of extraterrestrials that are behind that. And this, according to the Hidden Hand material, is connected to these Satanist bloodlines. So I think Kerry has really brought up a very important point, that this struggle between Satanism and white hats, Earth Alliance and Christians is happening on Earth. I think that this is something that also happens in space, and also happens with organizations such as the Galactic Federation of Worlds. Now, there are some that claim that the Galactic Federation of Worlds is one happy family, all united with all of these enlightened leaders, and everyone down the ranks are all kind of like all very happy with the policies. I think that's just hopium. I mean, I think the Galactic Federation of Worlds is like any organization when it comes to third, fourth, and fifth density consciousness. They can be compromised, and they can be compromised by these Satanist organizations or by other negative groups. And in fact, Dr. Andrea Martin, has talked about the infiltration, and what she has learned has been backed by others, such as these other two galactic envoys, Erica Amorina, Michelle Portofria, and also the Swaru material, which also needs to be considered. So, yeah, I think that this is something that is very, very important for us to consider, that all organizations can be infiltrated at these third, fourth, and fifth density levels. I mean, this is something that the Ra material talks about. It talks about that duality, or this kind of polarity war exists in the third, fourth, and fifth densities. But when you get to the sixth density, everything is harmonized. It's all brought together. And so we do have sixth density and seventh density and eighth density consciousnesses, and they work with, and they are also here. Often they are associated with more kind of spiritual organizations that do not promote duality, that do not say, well, the extraterrestrial, the Draco reptilians are our enemy, and we're going to get out there and we're going to kick ass and we're going to follow them to their home world and take it over. I mean, that's kind of third and fourth density thinking. Sixth density thinking is more along the lines of, well, the Draco reptilians were a mirror for us. We actually treat animals and other humans on this planet in the same way that the Draco reptilians have treated us. So we need to acknowledge that they acted as a mirror to us, and so we can learn from that and clean up our act, treat the animals on this planet better, treat the planet herself better, treat other humans better. And once we've done that, then the Draco reptilian problem will be gone, because they're a mirror. So once you solve the underlying issue, they'll be gone. And you might even thank them, kind of like the way you thank a drill sergeant in the military. You know, that the drill sergeant, you think this guy's a masochist, or he's a sadist, he's a psychopath. Look at what he does to me and the other recruits. But at the end of the training, it's like you thank the drill sergeant because he turned you into a soldier. Okay, so I think that in the same way, depending on your consciousness level, if you're 6th, 7th, and 8th density, then you're going to look at all the things happening in your life as something that mirror something internal within you or within your society. All right, so the final thing I want to talk about is the monthly briefing that is going to be held on July 19. So on July 19, I will hold my next monthly briefing where I discuss events over the preceding 4 to 6 weeks. And that briefing is made available for free to all Tier 2 members on my Patreon site. So my Patreon channel, there's the number of levels, and so as you go up one level, so as you go from level 1 to level 2 or Tier 1 to Tier 2, then for Tier 2 you get all these monthly briefings for free, and so once you join, you can access the ones that have been held as well in the past. They're all available for you. If you don't want to join Patreon and become a Tier 2 member, that's a solo patron member, then you can watch it directly on Crowdcast. It costs a little bit more, but that's a choice that you have as well. And so the links will be in the description for you to be able to watch this monthly briefing. So that's it. That is what I wanted to cover for this week in review. So thank you all, and aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.